I was 32 when I realized I had no idea who my best friend really was. That sentence alone sounds absurd, right? I mean, we'd grown up together, gone through the mess of teenage years, the awkward college days, the first heartbreaks, the first real jobs. I thought I knew him better than I knew myself. But looking back, maybe that was the problem. I never bothered to question the foundation of what we called friendship. His name was Mark, 2 years older than me, sharper jawline, louder laugh, and the kind of presence that made people instantly gravitate toward him. He had this gift of making everyone in a room feel like they mattered, even if only for a moment. Next to him, I was the quieter one, not shy, but more observant, more careful with my words. Where he was fire, I was stone. Where he was chaos, I was structure. Somehow, that balance had always worked, or so I believed. By the time I hit my 30s, life had started to stabilize. I had a decent job in project management at a construction firm, a small apartment downtown, and a girlfriend I genuinely thought I'd marry someday. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt safe. And through it all, Mark was still there, the one constant. We didn't talk every single day like we used to, but we always found our way back to each other. At least until that night. The night when everything cracked open, when years of trust splintered into something sharp and ugly. It started harmlessly enough. Mark had invited me to a small get-together at his place. A few drinks, some old friends, the usual catch-up. I almost didn't go. Work had been draining, and honestly, I'd started feeling like we were living in different worlds. But guilt pushed me there. A best friend doesn't just drift away, right? His apartment smelled like whiskey and burnt pizza when I walked in. Laughter spilled out from the living room, where Mark stood with a glass in his hand, retelling one of our high school stories, the one about the time we got caught sneaking into the football field at midnight. His voice filled the room, animated and confident. For a moment, it felt like old times. But then, my eyes landed on someone I hadn't expected to see. Samantha, my girlfriend, my almost fiancée, sitting on the couch, laughing at something Mark had just said. And the way she looked at him, it wasn't just friendly. It was something sharper, more private, like there was a whole conversation happening between them that I wasn't part of. I remember my stomach tightening, my throat drying out. The sounds of laughter blurred into static. I wanted to tell myself I was imagining it, that I was tired, overthinking. But instinct has a cruel way of slicing through denial. That night didn't end with a confrontation. I wish it had. Instead, it ended with me driving home alone, windows down, the cool night air doing nothing to quiet the storm inside me. It wasn't just jealousy, it was betrayal, or at least the first whisper of it. The thought that the one person I trusted most, the one person I leaned on more than anyone, might have been the one to break me in the worst way. I couldn't have known then how far that night would take me, how it would unravel not just my friendship with Mark, but parts of myself I didn't even know existed. Because losing a friend isn't like losing a lover. Lovers come and go, but a best friend, the person who's supposed to stand at your side through everything, when you lose that, it feels like someone reached inside your chest and stole a piece of your foundation. And once it's gone, nothing stands the same again.
The morning after that gathering, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. The city outside was waking up. Horns, footsteps, the hum of people with purpose. But inside my apartment, it felt like time had stalled. My phone buzzed twice, one from Mark, one from Sam. I didn't answer either. Instead, I replayed every detail from the night before. The way Sam leaned toward him, the way Mark's hand brushed against hers when he passed her a drink, the look in their eyes, like there was a history I didn't know about. Maybe it was nothing, but maybe it was everything. By noon, my paranoia had taken root deep enough that I finally caved and texted Sam. "Had fun last night?" She replied almost instantly. "Yeah, it was good to see everyone again. You seemed quiet, though. You okay?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Should I say it? Should I let the suspicion out into the open? Instead, I typed, "Just tired. Work's been crazy." Coward. That's the thing about betrayal, or even just the fear of it. It paralyzes you. You don't want to be wrong, but you don't want to ignore it either. You're stuck in this purgatory of doubt, where every small gesture becomes evidence, and every silence feels like confession. Over the next few days, Mark kept calling. I avoided him with excuses, deadlines, errands, migraines. He knew me well enough to sense something was off. Eventually, he cornered me the way only he could. "Man, what's going on with you?" he asked when he showed up uninvited at my apartment that Friday night. He had a six-pack in one hand and that half grin in place, the one that usually disarmed me. I shrugged. "Nothing, just busy." "Bullshit," he said, dropping the beers on my counter. "You've been ghosting me all week. Did I do something?" His eyes searched mine, and for a second I almost caved, almost blurted it all out. But pride is a stubborn thing. Instead, I shook my head. "Nah, just tired, man." He didn't buy it, but he didn't push either. We sat in silence, drinking in small gulps. Usually our conversations flowed effortlessly, bouncing from old stories to new dreams. But that night, the air was heavy, thick with unspoken words. I kept watching him, searching for cracks. Did he look guilty? Was there a flicker of something in his eyes when I mentioned Sam casually? Or was it all just in my head? The longer I kept it inside, the more it consumed me. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Sam and I had planned a quiet dinner at her place. She cooked pasta, poured wine, lit candles. On the surface, it was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. I tried to relax, to let the comfort of routine wash over me. But halfway through the meal, she slipped. She said Mark's name. Not in a guilty way, not in a confession, just casually, like he'd been part of her day. "Oh, Mark told me about that new bar opening downtown. She was setting out sometime." I froze. My chest tightened. "You talked to Mark today?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. "Yeah, just for a bit. He called to ask about—" She stopped, noticing my expression. "Why? Is something wrong?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my fist on the table and demand answers. But instead, I forced a smile. "No, just didn't know you two talk like that." She gave me a look, somewhere between confusion and annoyance. "He's your best friend. I thought it was normal." Maybe it was, but in that moment, it didn't feel normal. It felt like I was standing outside of a house I'd built with my own hands, only to find someone else living inside. That night, lying awake beside her, I stared at the ceiling and realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. The problem wasn't just Mark. The problem wasn't just Sam. The problem was me. Too scared to confront, too scared to lose, clinging to the idea of loyalty while it slipped silently through my fingers. But fear can only hold you for so long before anger takes over. And anger, I learned, has a way of setting everything in motion. Anger doesn't hit like a lightning strike, not for me anyway. It seeps in, slow and steady, until you can't tell where it starts and where you end. The following week, I caught myself rehearsing conversations in the shower, imagining what I'd say if I confronted Mark, picturing Sam's face when I asked her straight out. My mind became a courtroom, me the prosecutor, them the defendants. The verdict always ended the same: guilty. But outside of my head, I stayed silent. Until the night, everything snapped. It was a Thursday. I'd worked late, deadlines piling up, my boss breathing down my neck. By the time I left the office, my nerves were already frayed. I stopped by a bar near my apartment just to take the edge off. And that's when I saw them. Mark and Sam, together. Not in some dark corner, not whispering conspiratorially, just sitting at a table by the window, drinks in hand, leaning close like two people who didn't need words to understand each other. My legs went weak. The beer glass slipped in my hand, froth spilling onto my jacket. I couldn't breathe. They didn't notice me at first. I stood frozen at the entrance, half hidden by the crowd. A coward's place. Finally, Mark's eyes lifted, and he saw me. For a split second, he froze too, guilt flashing like a crack of lightning. Then he stood up, waving me over. "Hey man, what are you doing here?" His voice was too loud, too casual. Sam turned, her smile faltering when she spotted me. "I was just telling Mark about—" "Say it," I said. My voice shook. "Don't. Just don't." The people around us turned to look. The music, once background noise, now felt like static scratching inside my skull. I spun on my heel and left, pushing through the door into the cold night air. I half expected one of them to follow me. Neither did. That silence, that choice, hurt worse than the sight of them together. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. I heard their laughter, the ease in their voices, the intimacy that had no place between them. By morning, exhaustion had turned my anger into something sharper. I called Mark. "Come over," I said. My voice was clipped, steel-edged. He hesitated. "Now?" "Yes, now." 20 minutes later, he was at my door. Hands in his pockets, hair messy, eyes shadowed like he hadn't slept either. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded before he could even step inside. He sighed. "Look, man, you're blowing this out of proportion." "Out of proportion?" I said. "I saw you, with her." "We were just talking," he said, his tone defensive. "You weren't picking up my calls. Sam said she was worried about you, so we grabbed a drink. That's it." I laughed bitterly. "That's it? Do you even hear yourself?" "Yeah, I do, and I hear you too. You think I'd betray you like that?" His voice rose, raw. "After everything we've been through?" I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the images from last night kept stabbing at me. Then why did it look like more? He threw his hands up. "Because you want it to look like more. You're paranoid, man. You've been on edge for weeks. Don't put that on me." For a moment, we stood there, breathing hard, staring each other down. 30 years of friendship teetering on a knife's edge. Finally, he shook his head. "I'm not doing this. Not if you don't trust me." He turned to leave. "Mark?" I called after him. My voice cracked. "If there's something you're not telling me—" He paused, shoulders tense, then walked out without another word. The door clicked shut, and with it, something inside me snapped clean in half. Days blurred. Sam tried to reach me, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Every vibration of my phone felt like a fresh wound. Work became the only distraction, though even there my focus slipped. One night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out old photo albums. Pictures of Mark and me as kids, mud-streaked faces from Little League, crooked smiles at prom, drunken grins at college parties. Each photo felt like a lie now, like a story whose ending I'd misread. But then one picture stopped me cold. It was from my 25th birthday. Mark had organized the whole thing, surprising me with a gathering of friends at my favorite dive bar. In the photo, he had one arm around me, the other holding up a beer, his grin wide and genuine. That night, he told me, "You're my brother, man. Blood doesn't matter. You and me, we're in this for life." I remembered believing him. I remembered feeling invincible in that moment. And now I don't know what to believe. That was the cruelest part of betrayal, or even just the suspicion of it. It rewrites history. Suddenly, every laugh, every shared secret, every late-night conversation feels tainted. Was it ever real? Or had I been blind the whole time? I set the photo down and pressed my palms into my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt like a kid again. Not the confident man I'd become, but the scared, uncertain boy who never quite fit in unless Mark was there to pull him into the circle. And now, I wasn't sure I had a circle at all. If Mark's silence felt like a knife, Sam's persistence was salt in the wound. She kept texting, calling, even showed up outside my apartment once, knocking softly on the door. I sat inside, motionless, listening to her voice filter through the wood. "Please, Alex, just talk to me. You've got it wrong. We need to clear this up." But I didn't open the door. I told myself it was because I needed time, space, clarity.
The days after the diner felt like walking through rubble after a bomb blast. Everything familiar was gone. The foundation of my life, Sam, Mark, us, reduced to ashes. But the strange thing about destruction is that it clears the ground. And when the smoke finally started to thin, I realized I had a choice. Keep wandering through ruins or set fire to the last of it and watch it burn clean. I chose fire. It happened the following Friday. Mark texted me, "We need to end this, one way or another." For once, I didn't hesitate. Fine, your place, tonight. When I got there, the air felt charged, thick with something heavier than anger. His apartment was dim, a half-empty bottle of bourbon on the table, glasses already waiting. Like he knew this would be our last drink together. "Sit," he said. His voice was rough, his eyes bloodshot. I sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke, just the hum of the fridge and the clink of ice as he poured. Then he leaned back, staring at me like I was a stranger. 30 years, he said quietly. That's how long we've known each other. And this is what it comes down to. A woman. It's not just a woman, I snapped. It's Sam, my Sam, and you knew that. He slammed his glass down, liquid sloshing over the rim. And you knew you were losing her. Don't put all of this on me, Alex. You shut her out. You shut me out. You built walls so high no one could get in, and then you're shocked when she looked for a door somewhere else? His words cut because there was truth in them, but truth doesn't excuse betrayal. You could have called me out, I shot back. You could have said it to my face. Instead, you slipped into the cracks and took what you wanted. What I wanted? His laugh was bitter, sharp. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted her tears on my shoulder, her pain in my ear? I didn't go looking for it, Alex, but she needed someone, and you were too damn proud to be that someone. I stood, pacing, fists clenched. Don't you dare blame me for your choices. You were supposed to be my brother, my family. And you, my voice broke, you were the one person I thought would never hurt me. Mark's jaw tightened. His eyes glistened with something that looked like regret, or maybe just exhaustion. And maybe that was the problem. You put me on a pedestal I never asked for. I'm not perfect, Alex. I never was. You wanted me to be your anchor, your constant, your proof that life wouldn't change. But life does change. People change. I stopped pacing, chest heaving. So what, you're saying it's my fault for trusting you? I'm saying you never trusted yourself, he said quietly. And you leaned on me so hard that when I stumbled, it broke everything. The silence that followed was unbearable, the kind that buzzes in your ears and presses down on your lungs. Finally, I whispered, "Did you love her?" His eyes flicked to mine, and in that moment, I knew the truth before he said it. "Not the way you did," he said. "But yeah, part of me did. How could I not? She's smart, funny. She gets people in a way you and I never did. But I never touched her. I never crossed that line." The words should have been a relief. Instead, they twisted the knife. Because sometimes emotional betrayal cuts deeper than physical. I sank back into my chair, covering my face with my hands. So that's it. 30 years, gone. Because we couldn't figure out how to talk to each other. Mark's voice softened. It doesn't have to be gone. Not forever. I dropped my hands and glared at him. You really think we can go back after this? You really think I can look at you the same again? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew the truth. I stood, moving toward the door. My legs felt like lead, my chest hollow. "Goodbye, Mark," I said quietly. "Alex," his voice cracked behind me. I paused, hand on the doorknob, but I didn't turn. "I hope one day you realize I wasn't your enemy," he said. "I was just human, just like you." The words followed me out the door, down the hall, into the cold night. And for the first time since this all began, I felt the tears finally come. Not hot and angry, but heavy and broken. Tears for the boy I used to be, for the friend I thought I'd have forever, for the life I'd just buried. That night marked the death of our friendship, but it was also the start of something else, something I didn't yet understand. Because when you lose the person you thought would always be there, you're forced to face the one person who always will be: yourself. I didn't plan to see Sam again, not that night, not ever. Walking away from Mark had felt like ripping out a piece of myself, and I didn't think I had the strength for another amputation. But life has a way of forcing your hand. The next morning, she showed up at my door. No warning, no text, just a soft knock that made my chest tighten. I thought about ignoring it, pretending I wasn't home. But then her voice came, quiet and cracked. "Alex, please." And just like that, my resolve crumbled. I opened the door. She stood there in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair unkempt, eyes swollen from crying. She looked nothing like the confident, radiant woman I'd fallen in love with. She looked like someone wrecked. And for the first time in weeks, I saw my own reflection in her pain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. We sat across from each other at my kitchen table. No candles this time, no warmth. Just silence and 2 chipped mugs of coffee between us. "I talked to Mark," I said finally. She nodded. I figured. "He told me the truth, or at least his version of it." "And do you believe him?" I hesitated. "I believe nothing physical happened, but that doesn't change how it feels." Her eyes glistened. "Alex, I never meant to hurt you, I swear. But you shut me out. You made me feel like a stranger in your life." The words stung because they echoed Mark's. "So that makes what you did okay?" "No," she whispered. "Nothing makes it okay. But I need you to understand, I didn't fall for him. I just fell out of reach with you. And he was there." Her voice broke, and tears slid down her cheeks. I wanted to hate her. God, it would have been easier if I could. But sitting there, watching her cry, I felt something worse than hate: grief. Because grief meant love had been real. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You know what the hardest part is?" She looked up, eyes wide, waiting. "It's not losing you. It's realizing I lost myself somewhere along the way. I buried everything, my fears, my doubts, my anger, because I thought being strong meant being silent. And when I shut myself off, I left a gap. You filled it with him." Her voice broke, and tears slid down her cheeks. "I didn't want to. I just didn't know how else to survive." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of the fridge. Finally, I said the words I'd been avoiding. "We're done, Sam." Her face crumbled. "Alex." "No." My voice was steady, even as my chest ached. "I can forgive mistakes. I can forgive weakness. But I can't forgive a choice you made over and over again, to go to him instead of me. Even if nothing physical happened, the trust is gone, and without trust, there's nothing left." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. I watched her shoulder shake, feeling like my own ribs were splintering. "I loved you," I whispered, "more than I ever said out loud. But love isn't enough if it's only one-sided." Her sobs quieted, replaced by broken breaths. She looked at me through red-rimmed eyes. "So that's it? After everything, that's it?" I swallowed hard. "That's it." When she finally left, the apartment felt cavernous, empty in a way silence alone couldn't explain. I sat at the table for hours, staring at her empty mug, the faint trace of her lipstick on the rim. This was the price of pride, of silence, of fear. This was the cost of love and friendship, tangled too tightly together. I had lost them both. But in that hollow ache, there was also a strange clarity. For weeks, I'd been drowning in questions. Was it betrayal? Was it my fault? Could it be fixed? Now, for the first time, I had an answer. No, it couldn't be fixed. And admitting that, accepting it, was both the most painful and the most liberating thing I ever done. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. My phone buzzed twice, one from Sam, one. The morning after Sam left, I woke to an unfamiliar silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. No texts, no calls, no Mark dropping by with his easy grin. For years, my life had been anchored by two constants, my best friend and my girlfriend. Now, both had vanished overnight. I poured myself coffee, sat at the same table where Sam had cried, and stared at the walls. It felt like the apartment was holding its breath, waiting for me to collapse. But I didn't. Instead, I stood, grabbed my jacket, and stepped outside. The city looked different, not because it had changed, but because I had. For weeks, I'd been moving through the streets in a haze, every corner haunted by suspicion, every sound sharpened by paranoia. But now, for the first time, the noise was just noise. People laughing, cars honking, vendors shouting, life indifferent to my personal catastrophe. I realized then how small I was in the grand scheme of things. My heartbreak felt monumental, but out here, it was just another thread in the endless fabric of human struggle. And weirdly, that gave me comfort. The first few weeks were the hardest. Nights stretched into endless hours of replaying memories. Mark and me as kids, Sam and I in our first months of love. I kept searching for the moment when it all went wrong, the exact crack that spread into a fault line. I stopped drinking with people from work, stopped answering invitations. I told myself I needed space. But in truth, I was ashamed. Ashamed of being the guy who lost everything, his girl, his best friend, in one blow. But grief has a strange rhythm. It doesn't just weigh you down, it pushes you forward in uneven bursts. Some days I could barely drag myself out of bed. Other days I cleaned the apartment top to bottom, jogged until my lungs burned, wrote late into the night about everything I'd never said out loud. And through all that chaos, something began to shift. One evening, I found myself digging through an old box in my closet. Inside were relics from years ago. A baseball glove Mark and I had shared, ticket stubs from concerts, letters Sam had written when we first started dating. I sat on the floor, surrounded by fragments of my past, and for the first time, I didn't feel rage. I felt gratitude. Yes, Mark had betrayed me in ways I couldn't forgive. Yes, Sam had broken something we couldn't repair. But before all of that, they had given me moments of joy, belonging, love. And those moments still mattered, even if the endings were ugly. I realized then that I didn't need to erase them to move forward. I just needed to stop clinging to what they used to mean. Around the 2-month mark, I ran into Mark on the street. It was a Saturday morning, and I was carrying groceries when I heard his voice. "Alex!" I froze. Part of me wanted to keep walking, but I turned. He looked thinner, older somehow. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something quieter. He shoved his hands into his pockets. I just wanted to say, he hesitated, like the words were stones too heavy to lift. "I'm sorry. For everything." I searched his face, looking for the man I'd once trusted with my life. He was still there, buried under the guilt and the years. And for a fleeting moment, I felt the ache of what we lost. "I know," I said simply. Then I walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was closure. Sam, on the other hand, didn't reach out again. At first, her silence felt like abandonment all over again. But over time, I came to see it as a gift. She respected the boundary I'd set, and in doing so, she gave me room to heal. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I hated it. sitting in a sterile office, trying to put words to feelings I'd buried for decades. But little by little, I unraveled. I talked about my fear of being left, about the pressure I'd put on Mark to be more than human, about how I equated silence with strength. And slowly, I began to redefine what strength meant. It wasn't bottling things up until they exploded. It wasn't pretending everything was fine while I bled inside. Strength was vulnerability. Strength was saying, I'm not okay, but I'm here anyway. By the 4th month, I noticed something strange. I was smiling again. Not all the time, not effortlessly, but enough to remind me I was still capable of joy. A coworker invited me to a pickup basketball game, and I said yes. I met new people, laughed at bad jokes, felt my body loosen in ways it hadn't in months. It wasn't the same as the easy camaraderie I'd once had with Mark, but it didn't need to be. It was something new. And that, I realized, was the point. I wasn't going to rebuild what I'd lost. I was going to build something different. Something mine. By the 6th month, the ache had dulled into something quieter. Not gone, but softened. Like an old scar you forget about when the weather changes. I still thought of them, Sam, Mark, sometimes in flashes that caught me off guard. The way Mark used to slap my shoulder before a big game. The way Sam's laugh filled a room. Those memories weren't poisoned anymore. They were just echoes. And echoes, I realized, couldn't hurt me unless I chased them. One evening, I sat on that same balcony where I'd once cried, watching the city lights. This time, I wasn't drowning in loss. I was breathing in possibility. I thought about the boy I'd been when I first met Mark, skinny, unsure, desperate for someone to show me who I could be. And I thought about the man I'd been with Sam, hiding my fears behind a mask of composure, convinced that silence equaled strength. But now I was neither of those versions. I was raw, scarred, imperfect, and somehow more whole than I'd ever been. It was around then that I reconnected with my sister, Claire. We'd drifted apart years ago over petty arguments and the distance of adulthood, but she reached out one Sunday, inviting me to her kid's birthday party. At first, I hesitated. Family gatherings always felt like landmines, full of questions I didn't want to answer. But something in me said yes, and when I showed up, cake in hand, and saw her smile, I felt a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been craving. We talked late into the night, after everyone else left, about childhood, about mistakes, about the people we used to be. And in that conversation, I found something I hadn't expected: forgiveness. Not for her, not for Mark or Sam, for myself. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to rewrite the past. I was just letting it be. Life moved on in small, steady increments. I started taking long runs along the river, not to escape, but to feel my lungs expand, my heart beat steady. I picked up old hobbies, guitar, sketching, things I'd abandoned when life had gotten too crowded. And slowly, I built new connections. Not replacements for Mark or Sam, but friendships rooted in the man I was becoming, not the boy I had been. One of those friends, Evan, asked me one night over beers, "Do you ever think about reaching out to either of them?" I shook my head. No, because if I do, it won't be for them. It'll be for me. And I don't need that anymore. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. The final test came about a year later. I was at a bookstore, browsing, when I saw her. Sam. She was standing in the aisle, holding a novel, her hair a little shorter, her eyes a little older. For a moment, my chest tightened. Memories rushed back, sharp and sweet all at once. She noticed me and froze. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other across the shelves, two ghosts colliding in the living world. Finally, she gave me a small, tentative smile. Not the smile of a lover, not even the smile of a friend. Just acknowledgement. And I smiled back. No words, no explanations. Just two people who had shared something once and who had both survived its end. She turned back to her book. I walked out of the store. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to look back. That night, sitting on my balcony again, I realized the full truth. I hadn't just lost a friend and a partner. I'd lost the illusion that people could be permanent. And in that loss, I'd found something more enduring: myself. Because friends can betray, lovers can leave, even family can falter. But the one person I'll always wake up with, the one person I'll always face in the mirror, is me. And if I can trust that man, flawed, scarred, but still standing, then maybe I've already won. The resolution wasn't fireworks or some grand reconciliation. It was quieter than that. It was waking up and making coffee without dread. It was laughing with new friends. It was showing up for family. It was standing alone, but not lonely. It was life moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to meet it head on. It's strange, the way life teaches you lessons you didn't want to learn. You think betrayal, loss, heartbreak, they break you. And they do, in ways that leave scars deep under the skin. But in those scars, I found clarity. I learned that friendship isn't guaranteed, not even when it feels like it should be. Mark was my brother in every way that mattered. Sam was the love I'd thought could withstand anything. And yet, even the strongest bonds can fracture when fear, pride, and miscommunication creep in. The people we love most can hurt us the deepest, not always intentionally, but simply by being human. I also learned that trust is fragile. It's not a contract you can write on paper or a promise you can swear on. It's earned, nurtured, and sometimes lost forever. And once it breaks, it leaves you at a crossroads. Cling to what's gone, or let go and face the unknown. I chose the latter, and it was terrifying, but necessary. Anger and grief taught me resilience. There were nights I thought I'd drown in them. Anger at being deceived, grief at what I'd lost, guilt at the ways I'd failed myself and others. But surviving those nights became a training ground for my heart. I learned that strength doesn't mean never feeling pain. It means feeling it fully